My name is Herminia. I'm sitting in my dorm room at Penn State, surrounded by textbooks and the soft glow of a desk lamp. Outside, the maples on the quad are ablaze with orange and red, a stark contrast to the stormy memories that still haunt me. It's hard to believe that just a few months ago, my life was on the verge of being derailed by the man I once called my father. I grew up in a small town, in a house on Elm Street that looked picture perfect from the outside. It was a two-story colonial with a wraparound porch, and my father, Victor, took great pride in mowing the lawn every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock sharp. He did it not because he enjoyed it, but because he wanted the neighbors to see him as the perfect family man. Image was everything to Victor, but control was his true obsession. Inside the house, every aspect of our lives was dictated by him. The thermostat was always set at 66 degrees Fahrenheit in winter because he said anything warmer was a waste. The TV was always tuned to his favorite sports channel, and woe betide anyone who dared to change it. Dinner was served at 7 p.m. precisely, and if the silverware wasn't arranged just so, there would be hell to pay. My mother, Isabella, was a kind-hearted woman with long, dark hair and a smile that could light up a room. She had dreams of becoming a writer, but Victor crushed those dreams early on. When I was 9 years old, she was diagnosed with stage 3 lung cancer. By the following Christmas, it had progressed to stage 4, and she was gone before the daffodils bloomed in the spring. After my mother's death, Victor changed. Or maybe he just shed the thin veneer of kindness that he had maintained for her sake. He became a tyrant, ruling the house with an iron fist. He took down all the pictures of my mother, packing them away in a box and shoving them into the attic. I managed to sneak out a small photo of her holding me at the beach, our faces lit up by the sun. I kept it hidden under my mattress, a precious reminder of the love we once shared. My daily routine was a never-ending cycle of chores and obedience. I woke up at 5:45 a.m. to make breakfast for Victor and my 13-year-old brother, Leo. I made his coffee just the way he liked it, black with 2 sugars, and if I got it wrong, he would push the mug away without a word. After breakfast, I packed Leo's lunch and walked him to the bus stop. Then it was off to school, where I tried to focus on my studies despite the weight of my home life. When I got home, the real work began. I did the laundry, cleaned the house from top to bottom, and started dinner. By the time I sat down to do my homework, I was exhausted. Victor monitored my every move, checking my phone to make sure I wasn't wasting time and forbidding me from joining any clubs or sports teams. "You have responsibilities," he would say, as if I were an adult with a mortgage instead of a teenager with dreams. But there was one glimmer of hope in my life: my school counselor, Ms. Thompson. She was a no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, with a sharp mind and a kind heart. She noticed the way I flinched when someone raised their voice in the hallway, and the way I always rushed home after school. One day in my junior year, she pulled me aside and asked me what I wanted to do with my life. No one had ever asked me that before, and I didn't know how to answer. Thompson helped me apply to college in secret. She lent me SAT prep books from her own collection and helped me write my essays during lunch breaks in her office. We used the school's address as the return address on all my applications because Victor checked the mailbox every day like a hawk. I also confided in my grandmother, Amelia. She was a strong-willed woman who had always been there for me. I called her from Ms. Thompson's office one evening and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, and then she said, "Use my address as a backup. I'll watch for the letters." It was Amelia who received the letter from Stanford University first. I had been accepted with a partial scholarship of $15,000 a year. I would need about $10,000 more for tuition and living expenses, but it was a start. When Amelia called to tell me the news, I cried silently in Ms. Thompson's office. It was a dream come true. Amelia told me to tell Victor at Sunday dinner. She said she would be there to support me. I was terrified, but I knew I had to do it. I spent the week leading up to dinner rehearsing what I would say, my hands shaking every time I thought about it. Sunday evening finally arrived. I set the table the way I always did, with Victor's plate at the head of the table and his water glass on the right. Leo sat to his left, and Uncle Henry, Victor's younger brother, sat across from him. Amelia took her usual seat at the other end of the table, near the kitchen. I had cooked Victor's favorite meal: roast beef, mashed potatoes, and green beans. The smell of the food filled the house, but it did nothing to ease my nerves. Victor was in a good mood, which should have been my first warning. He came downstairs whistling, clapped Leo on the back, and even complimented the smell of the food. After we had all served ourselves and started eating, I took a deep breath and pulled the envelope out from under my seat. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling. "I got accepted to Stanford with a scholarship." I held the envelope out to him, my hands shaking. Victor set down his fork and looked at the envelope as if it were a snake. He took it from me and slowly pulled out the letter. As he read it, his face turned red. Not angry red, but a darker, more dangerous red. He tore the letter in half, the sound echoing through the silent room. Then he tore it again and again, until it was nothing but confetti. "No daughter of mine needs a fancy college education," he said, his voice cold and hard. "You're staying right here and getting a job at the local diner. That's the end of it." I looked down at the pieces of the letter, my heart breaking. All those months of hard work, the late nights studying and writing essays, all gone in an instant. Victor then turned to Amelia. "This is your doing, isn't it? You've been filling her head with ideas." Amelia sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't say a word, but there was a look in her eyes that I had never seen before. It was a look of determination. "Clear the table, Herminia," Victor said, not even looking at me. "This conversation is over." I stood up, my body moving on autopilot. 9 years of conditioning had taught me to obey without question. But just as I reached for his plate, Amelia's voice stopped me. "Sit down, Herminia." Victor's eyes snapped to Amelia. "Ma, stay out of this. This is my house, my daughter, and my decision." Uncle Henry shifted in his seat. "Victor, maybe we should talk about this." Victor cut him off. "You don't get a vote, Henry." Then he turned back to me. "And by the way, I called Stanford on Thursday and tried to withdraw your application. They said they needed your signature, but you'll sign that withdrawal form right here at the table tonight." Amelia sat still for exactly 30 seconds. I was counting. In those 30 seconds, the only sounds were the ticking of the clock and the faint scrape of Victor's fork against his plate. Then Amelia set down her napkin, folded it neatly, and placed it to the right of her plate. She pushed back her chair and stood up. She walked slowly to the coat closet by the front door and took out her coat. She put it on one arm at a time and buttoned it at the waist. Victor looked up from his plate. "Where are you going? Dinner's not over." Amelia walked back to the table and stood behind her chair. She looked directly at Victor. "Pack her bags." Victor laughed, a loud, mocking laugh. "Pack her bags? And send her where? With what money?" Amelia reached into her handbag and pulled out a stack of papers. She placed them on the table in front of Victor. It was a deed, a property deed. At the top, in bold black ink, was her name, Amelia Rodriguez. "This house has been in my name since 1998, Amelia said, her voice steady. "I bought it with your father's life insurance money and my savings after he passed. I let you live here rent-free because you were grieving and you had 2 children to take care of. But I never, not once, signed this house over to you. There is no transfer, no agreement. The deed is mine." Victor's smile faded. He looked at the deed, then at Amelia, and then back at the deed. "So what? You're going to kick me out? Your own son?" Amelia looked at him, her eyes filled with sadness. "I'm giving you a choice, Victor. Herminia goes to Stanford this fall with my financial support. You let her go, and you can keep living here. Or you fight this, and I'll call my lawyer tonight." Uncle Henry picked up the deed and read it. His eyes widened, and he looked at Victor with a mixture of shock and disappointment. Leo's mouth was open, and he was looking at me, then at Amelia, then back at me. I sat there, staring at the deed, my mind racing. All these years I had thought this was Victor's house, that he had the power to control our lives. But it was all a lie. Victor's face turned red with anger. "You think a piece of paper scares me? I've been taking care of this house for 20 years. I've paid the bills, fixed the roof, and done everything. Any court would side with me. Amelia didn't respond. She just stood there, her hands clasped in front of her, waiting for him to make his decision. Then Victor turned to me. Tell your grandmother to stop this nonsense, Herminia. You know this is your home. You don't want to destroy this family over a school. I looked at him, and for the first time in 9 years, I didn't look away. I've been sitting down for 9 years, Dad. I'm done. Victor's mouth opened, but no words came out. I think he was finally realizing that he had lost control. I walked upstairs to my room. It was small and cluttered, but it was mine. I packed my backpack, filling it with clothes, my toothbrush, and the SAT prep books that MS Thompson had lent me. I also took the photo of my mother from under my mattress and slipped it into my jacket pocket. Leo was standing in the hallway, his eyes red. Herminia, I don't want you to go. I pulled him into a hug. I'm not leaving you, Leo. I'm just leaving this. I went downstairs. Victor was standing at the bottom of the staircase, blocking the door. If you walk out that door, don't come back. I walked past him, my head held high. He didn't move to stop me. I think he knew that he couldn't. Amelia had the car running, the headlights on. She opened the passenger door for me and I got in. I put my backpack on my lap and didn't look back at the house. As we drove away, Elm Street got smaller and smaller in the rear view mirror. Over the next few days, Victor didn't give up easily. He called Amelia's phone multiple times, but she ignored him. He also called me, his voice changing from soft and pleading to angry and threatening. He even posted on Facebook, painting me as a rebellious teenager being manipulated by my grandmother. In our small town, the gossip spread like wildfire. People who didn't know the truth started to side with Victor. At school, kids I barely knew would stop me in the hallway and ask me if it was true that I had run away from home. It was hard, but I tried to stay strong. One Saturday morning, Leo called me in a whisper. I found something in Dad's desk. He keeps it locked, but he left the key in his jacket. He had found a manila folder filled with all the college mail that had been sent to me. There were letters from other universities, brochures, and even a copy of my SAT score report. Victor had been intercepting my mail for months, systematically destroying my chances of going to college. At the bottom of the folder, Leo found a letter from my aunt, Sophia, my mother's sister. She lived in New York City and had been cut off from our family after my mother's death. In the letter, she wrote about how much she missed me and how proud my mother would be of me. Victor had kept her from me for all these years. A few weeks later, the eviction notice was served. Victor hired a lawyer, but after looking at the deed and the lack of any written agreement, the lawyer told him that he had no case. The court hearing was held in a small room in the town hall. Victor sat on one side with his lawyer, looking angry and defeated. Amelia sat on the other side with her lawyer, a calm and confident woman named MS Harris. I sat in the front row behind Amelia, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, listened to both sides. Victor's lawyer argued that he had made significant improvements to the house and that he had an implied agreement with Amelia. But MS Harris presented the deed and 20 years of property tax records, all in Amelia's name. The judge ruled in Amelia's favor. Victor was ordered to vacate the house within 10 days. He stood up, his face red with anger. This is a travesty. It's all because of that girl who wants to go to school. The room went silent. Everyone in the room could see what kind of man he was. After the hearing, we walked out to the parking lot. Victor was standing next to his truck, his keys in his hand. He looked at me and Amelia. You took everything from me. Amelia looked at him, her eyes filled with sadness. I didn't take anything, Victor. I just stopped giving. Uncle Henry walked up to Victor and put a hand on his shoulder. You can stay with me, Victor, but you need to let Herminia go. Victor didn't say a word. He got in his truck and drove away. I started at Stanford in the fall. It was a new beginning, a chance to finally pursue my dreams. Amelia had opened a savings account in my name when I was 10, and over the years, she had saved $20,000. Combined with the scholarship, I had enough to cover my first year. I also reconnected with my aunt, Sophia. She invited me to New York City for Thanksgiving, and it was like meeting a part of my mother again. She told me stories about my mother's dreams and how much she had wanted me to have a better life. In the dorm room, I look at the photo of my mother and the letter she left me. Amelia gave it to me on the night before I left for college. In the letter, my mother wrote about all the things she loved about me, and she told me to never let anyone tell me what I was worth. I've learned so much from this experience. I've learned that silence isn't loyalty, and that sometimes you have to stand up for what you believe in. I've also learned that power doesn't have to be loud. Amelia sat quietly at the dinner table and changed my life with a deed and a few words. And I've learned that leaving isn't the same as giving up. I left a house filled with pain and control, and I stepped into a world of possibilities. I'm finally free to be myself, and I'm grateful for every moment of it.